Some moments are too perfect, too impossible, as if reality itself is playing a trick. There are whispers of a phenomenon so unsettling it challenges the very fabric of our understanding. Moments that seem to repeat. People appearing in two places at once. Objects existing in impossible states. This is not mere hallucination. These are the signs of a deeper truth. A world where the veil between what is and what was, or what could be, grows thin. In Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a town long accustomed to the uncanny, where shadows stretch long and impossible things are rumored to walk, a man named Thomas began the arduous task of renovating his ancestral home. Beneath the warped, ancient floorboards of his century-old kitchen, a space untouched for generations, he found something that defied all logic and the very concept of time. Thomas felt a prickle of profound unease, as if he hadn't just discovered history, but had stumbled into a place where history was still happening, existing simultaneously with his own present. It was the first chilling sign that something was pressing against the edges of their reality here, a moment caught in an impossible stasis, perfectly replicated, the unsettling sensation of a moment held in unnatural stasis, so perfectly preserved it felt like a duplicate, surfaced again, thousands of miles away, in the sun-drenched, vortex-riddled hills of Sedona, Arizona. Here, where the very earth is said to hum with unseen energies, a resident named Sarah was sipping her morning coffee, watching the first light paint the iconic red rocks. At 7:15 a.m., she saw her neighbor Dave back his familiar blue pickup truck out of his driveway, stop at the end of the street, and drive away. It was a mundane sight, yet it imprinted itself with the same sharp, almost artificial clarity and unwavering detail as the contents of that impossible time capsule in Point Pleasant. An hour later, at 8:20 a.m., a knock came at her door. It was Dave, standing on her porch, holding a casserole dish, a welcome gift from his wife. Sarah, bewildered and a chill creeping up her spine, asked him when he'd returned. Dave looked genuinely confused, a polite smile faltering. He insisted he had never left. His truck, he explained, had been in his driveway the entire time. Sarah walked to her window. There it was, the identical blue pickup, parked exactly where it should be. The image of Dave driving away was so vivid, so undeniable, etched into her memory, yet the Dave standing before her, the truck in the driveway, were equally, palpably real. It was as if a moment had split, creating two identical versions of an event, both utterly convincing, both utterly impossible. The fabric of time itself, it seemed, was beginning to fray, stretching and doubling in ways that defied human comprehension. The fracture in reality, first glimpsed in the perfectly preserved past of Point Pleasant, and then in the doubled present of Sedona, reached its most profound and chilling expression in Salem, Massachusetts. In this town, where the very air still hums with the echoes of its own impossible, duplicated past, a past where truth and delusion once mirrored each other with fatal consequences, a geological survey team made a discovery that baffled them entirely. In a remote, untamed stretch of wilderness just beyond the town's ancient borders, they found a phenomenon unlike any seen before. It was a massive, perfectly circular depression in the earth, hundreds of feet across, yet utterly unlike any known geological formation. There was no evidence of impact from a meteor, no volcanic activity, no subterranean collapse to explain its flawless symmetry. The soil within the circle was undisturbed, almost pristine, as if it had been pressed down by an invisible, colossal hand, leaving a flawless, empty imprint. It wasn't a crater, it was an absence, a perfectly formed void that seemed to exist outside of natural explanation. It echoed the impossible stillness of the time capsule, the unnatural perfection of the duplicated neighbor's departure. This was not merely a moment replayed or an object preserved. This was a permanent scar, a wound on the very landscape, a place where reality had been so violently pressed against itself that it had left an indelible imprint, a perfect, silent testimony to a collision of worlds. The stage was set for the horrifying truth of what happens when the fabric of existence begins to tear. What connects these impossible events, from the time capsule in Point Pleasant to the doubled neighbor in Sedona, and the perfect, enigmatic void in Salem, is not a series of isolated anomalies, but a singular, terrifying phenomenon known as asterisk bilocation, not merely of people, but of moments, of objects, of entire localities. Imagine reality as a tightly woven tapestry. Now, however, its threads are fraying, stretching thin. In Point Pleasant, the energetic resonance of bilocation allowed a single moment in time to exist twice, once as history, and again as a perfectly preserved, static echo, defying all decay, a moment held in an impossible suspension. That initial energetic disturbance, like a ripple expanding across the subtle planes of existence, then expressed itself more overtly in Sedona, causing Dave's departure to bilocate, a true event and a phantom duplicate, both experienced as undeniably real, yet irreconcilable. Finally, in Salem, the very earth itself was forced into a state of bilocation. The land existed simultaneously as solid ground and as a perfect impression of an asterisk elsewhere, a perfect mirror of an alternate reality pressed so hard against our own that it left a physical scar, a perfectly circular depression, a ghost wound from a direct collision of worlds. The unsettling truth is that when reality bilocates, we are left to wonder which version is the true one, and what happens to the copy. The universe, it seems, is far more fluid than we can comprehend, capable of folding back on itself, of duplicating moments, people, and even places. What you have witnessed here are not isolated incidents, but fragments of a larger truth. We are left to ponder, how often does this happen unseen, and how many of us have unknowingly brushed against a bilocated reality?